Let's talk a little NBA playoffs with Steve Aschburner, senior writer from NBA.com. Steve, how you doing?
I'm good, Dan. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. Game 2 tonight, Sixers, Celtics, and Joel Embiid, the reigning MVP, gonna be playing in this one despite battling the sprained knee. Are you surprised they didn't take the Jimmy Butler approach and just let him sit for at least another game?
Well, we haven't seen it yet. So I'm in Boston. I was there when Doc Rivers talked about what Joel had not been doing lately in his rehab and what he has been doing. And his comments from Monday night to Tuesday were pretty consistent, because on Monday he told us he had done zero running for since April 20th. And then yesterday he went out and ran through some, I guess they call it skeleton work or whatever, and did some running. But, I mean, I asked Rivers, how do you go from zero running to playoff mode just like that? And, you know, he acknowledged that's a pretty big ask. So if either they were sandbagging us in terms of what Embiid was doing to get himself back for Game 2, or if he plays at all, we're likely to see maybe cameo appearances until he's gassed, which might take, you know, a matter of a few minutes, depending on the pace that we have in this game. So, you know, we'll see. I don't know what to expect from Joel Embiid in Game 2. I am surprised from the standpoint Rivers had said, you know, if there's any question at all, they would basically err on the side of caution, because they've split. They've already got the split of the first two at Boston. They've got home court advantage now, regardless of what happens tonight. There's no real urgency for Embiid to be out there tonight. I mean, this way he can wait till, you know, 2 more days. You know, who knows what that might spell in terms of his knee and his conditioning. So we'll see. It'll be obviously the biggest angle going into tonight's game. Now, if he comes out and he plays like an MVP or anything approaching it, then, you know, Boston could be in trouble, and that may be what Philadelphia sees. It's like, you know, let's grab the series while we have the edge.
That's interesting to go from not running at all for as long as he's been out to running for the first time to the very next day playing in a playoff game. Yeah, I would lean towards him not having a huge impact in this one, and I also just sit him out another game. Like, I thought that was really smart what the Heat did with Jimmy Butler, but listen, he's the only one who knows exactly how he's feeling, and I'm sure he's in Doc's ear saying, "Let's go. I'm ready to go. I want to get back." Which is often the case. Dillion Brooks in Memphis, his time there is over. Were you surprised when the report came out that the Grizzlies said basically under no circumstances will Dillion Brooks be back with the Memphis Grizzlies?
Yeah, I mean, I was very surprised by that. I mean, not only is that sort of bad form in employer-employee relations in general, but, I mean, they're throwing this guy under the bus. Even if he spun out of control for a couple weeks there of the postseason. I mean, this you know, Dillion Brooks has been a helpful piece for them. He was really important in previous, you know, playoff toes dipped in the water last year and such. And I thought he did a very creditable and at times thankless job for them this year. He accepted that role as a 3-and-D guy, and he guarded the other team's most potent scorers on many nights. He allowed Jaren Jackson Jr. to thrive as a help defender and a rim protector and win the Defensive Player of the Year award. You know, Dillion Brooks, it was ill-advised. I was standing right in front of him when he made the comments about LeBron in the post-game locker room in Memphis. And in real time, I mean, it was as if you could hear, while he was talking in front of me, I could hear in my head, "Oh, this is a huge mistake. Do not do this. You know, you are going to live to regret this." And you know, apparently he's going to regret it in ways beyond what he would have thought. Look, it would have been easy for the Grizzlies to just let free agency happen. In the meantime, they could have, you know, lied to media people and just said, "Well, you know, we'll certainly be competitive with Dillion, and, you know, we want him to come back," and stick to a nope, under no circumstances policy internally. Yeah, I know stuff can leak out, and I guess in essence this did leak out. But was it? See, I'm still wondering: was it a quote or was it a characterization by someone who reported it? If you have management there or the owner of the Memphis Grizzlies saying under no circumstances with quote marks around it, that's one thing. If it's a characterization by somebody, tweeting out their version of the Grizzlies' stance on Brooks, even if true, in essence, but under no circumstances, I can't beat somebody up unless I know that's exactly what someone said. Now they could have just said, "Look, we're done with him. He can go out there and find something better. We need to make a change." That might imply under no circumstances, but that's pretty cold and harsh language. If it truly was said by an official Grizzlies person, then, I think they're going to hurt themselves. They're going to hurt themselves in free agency with other NBA players. Who wants to go, play for an organization that after you bust a gut for them will, put you out there like that and do you wrong. I think there was no profit in it for them to do this, and they got a little emotional and carried away. And I think that they've got some damage control to do as a result. And Dillion Brooks hasn't even hit free agency.
Yeah, that seems to be the consensus out there. Suns up 2-0 on the Nuggets. Nuggets up 2-0 on the Suns as the series goes back to Phoenix. And I see, obviously, on their home court, Phoenix favored by 3.5 as of right now. That game is going to be on Friday. To me, I look at this series, and I think this series is over. Chris Paul battling a groin injury. Denver looking very much like the number one seed. What's your take on that series?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've professionally, I've had to violate my rule of not talking about other men's groins, but in this case, it's material to what we're watching, and hope to see as this plays out. I mean, Chris Paul is vital to them. He organizes them. He brings a toughness. He brings even, some cheap shots that can be instrumental in swinging a game this way or that. So, that if he's hobbled at all, then, they're going to have problems. Denver, to me, is looking more and more like a team in full. I think that they, either we're seeing them, night after night in the playoffs in ways maybe we don't when they're playing those games in the Western Conference and Mountain Time zones and things like that, or they truly have stepped it up at this point. But I mean, the way they pick up each other, and how Jamal Murray can almost be a bonus at this point. I mean, he wasn't having a good game, and yet he hits a key shot or two, and all of a sudden that can put them over the top. So Phoenix has got the scores, though. I mean, to deal with Booker and Durant on the floor at the same time, that could totally shift with the change in venue. So I'd still be amazed if this is not at least a 6-game series.
Elsewhere in the Western Conference, Lakers stealing Game 1 on the road from the Warriors, due in large part to Anthony Davis. 30 points, 23 rebounds, the best game in the playoffs by a Laker big man since Shaq 21 years ago. And they got contributions from guys they needed to get contributions from. A D'Angelo Russell, a Dennis Schroeder, each chipping in 19 points. LeBron with 22 and 11 boards. This series, obviously far from over, but what a drama-filled night it was last night between those two teams in the Bay Area.
Yeah, and when you're talking about a what is it, a sixth seed and a 7th seed?
Yeah, first time in a long time.
You never would have guessed it from the way this thing is already shaped up. And yeah, I think that was just a quirk of the Western Conference regular season and how things played out. But these are two playoff tested teams. Golden State showed that any of those nervous feelings about they can't win on the road all of a sudden this year. Well, they took care of that against Sacramento. LeBron and his team have been rolling. The one caution, I guess, is that the Lakers had a few days off. Anthony Davis was fine and rested. He's had a pattern of not putting together consecutive big games. One day in between is a lot different from, whatever it was they had, 2, 3, 4 days to prepare. And so, can he be that force the same way, in game 2 and again in game 3 and again, maybe they don't need quite that much, but he could have a drop-off. He had drop-offs against Memphis, and it was rather telling. LeBron, too. Was, he's not invulnerable. He's pretty indestructible, but still, that could have been peak LeBron. So Golden State, it's interesting when these teams, though, just like with Boston, just like with, less so with New York because they're sort of fortunate to be so far, but they lose that home court advantage right away. It's a thing that they strive for all season long, and all of a sudden the series, looks like it could flip on something like that. Now Golden State, they're going to have to go out and win on the road again, and it won't be just a bus ride. It'll be a little longer flight down the coast to do that in LA. So, we'll see. But, I think they know the formula. They'll figure out a way to not have Jordan Poole launching from 28 or 30 feet, whatever it was, with the game on the line, and the outcomes could flip. I think 3 of these 4 series are going to go pretty deep, pretty long.
Yeah, I could easily see that. I'd be surprised if the Lakers and Warriors don't go to 7 games. Defensively, I thought the Lakers were very smart in how they were playing the Warriors most of the game. They weren't concerned with anybody outside of Steph and Clay on the perimeter. They were able to dominate the paint. I think Jared Vanderbilt has been a tremendous addition to the Lakers defensively. Yep. But you saw that change when the pace quickened there in the fourth quarter. Their transition defense, not nearly as good as their half-court defense, which leads me to wonder, why doesn't Golden State just push the pace the entire game?
Well, that's a good question. We might see them shift that gear. In game 2, especially if, like I said, key Lakers are not as fresh as they were. I mean, when Anthony Davis is dominating at both ends, it frees up his teammates at both ends. And so, defensively, they know he's got the rim, he's got the paint, and they're able to do a little bit more. But, I think obviously a quicker pace favors the Warriors if they can maintain it.
All right, we're in the semifinals, of course, of the NBA playoffs. Talking to Steve Aschburner, senior writer from NBA.com. 2 storylines, 2 most interesting storylines to you in the semifinals at the Eastern and Western Conference. You can go 1 from each conference. You can go 2 in one conference. What's the most interesting thing to you right now?
Let's see. Well, I'm covering the Sixers and Celtics, so I thought it was fascinating the way James Harden dusted off the best version of his old self in Game 1. We may not see it again. If Embiid is back and playing, halftime or better, Harden is going to have to rein himself in again for the betterment of the 76ers. But he came out and a guy that I really don't like watching, at least that version of him when he was pounding the ball for Houston and Brooklyn and begging for foul calls and things. He didn't do that. He wasn't driven to try to get to the line. But I mean, he was, tremendous as a scorer. He still had a half a dozen assists. It fit because they needed that firepower. So I thought Harden largely this season refurbished his image, and showed his willingness to sacrifice, what he had gotten so comfortable doing, for the good of the Sixers. And I think that in Game 1 of this round, I mean, he just did it all over again. And that to me was impressive. He's going to end up in the Hall of Fame. I don't have a vote. He's already won an MVP. He doesn't need my approval. But to me, that was impressive. So I would say that as number 1. You wanted to have the series that are still going on, right?
Yes.
You don't want anybody's dramatic failing or anything. Geez, what would I say? I'm a Julius Randle fan, and so watching how he sort of navigates the criticism, the benching, the ankle recovery that's still not 100%. He's a proud guy. The team rode with him, for quite a while before they've enjoyed this success. Jalen Brunson has sort of, changed up the pecking order there. The way they played when Randall wasn't playing, that helps change up, the pecking order as well. And so, he has expressed that he just wants to be available to the Knicks for however much he can help. And I've always just enjoyed his game. He's a very animated personality. I love watching his old school low post game, and yet, he goes outside and obviously, adapts to the whole stretch four era. So I guess I would keep my eye on him. I just don't know whether that series is going to last long enough to spend a lot of time watching Julius Randle. I think that Miami, that was a strategic move to not have Butler played. If they had needed him, I'm pretty sure he would have played. And Spoelstra, he's the best coach in the NBA. If he gets his team, down to Miami, they could easily win the next two. All of a sudden, it's 3-1, and that's going to be awfully hard for New York to come back from. So that might, I think, end up being the shortest of these four series.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if they can close this out in relative easy fashion if they get Jimmy Butler back. And then at some point, if they've advanced, Tyler Hero is going to be back as well. Julius Randle with 25 points and 3 3-pointers in that win last night over the Heat. Steve Aschburner, senior writer from NBA.com. Steve, we appreciate the time. Enjoy tonight.
You're welcome, Dan.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.